And we are live, I think.
I don't know. Are we
I don't know,
live?
Alex, it's been a hot minute. How are you?
I know it's good. How are you?
It's very tired. One of our dogs got spayed today, and I feel like
Tulpa,
I just got
right?
spayed today.
Tulpa?
I feel
Tulpa? How old is Tulpa?
she's like 7 months, I think. But
And
anyway, I
she's
had stayed up all night with her because she couldn't eat or drink anything. I wanted to make sure that she wasn't going to die. So now I feel like I'm going to die because I haven't slept. And yeah, now it's time to talk about Wild Mountain Thyme, which is actually going to be a very chill thing to talk about.
yeah.
No
I think
stress. But before that,
very
Alex,
chill.
welcome to Cinema Bias. It's nice to have you. Oh, what
Drew.
up? What up? You just caught me
Drew.
texting. Yes?
Well, who wasn't texting? What if I told you Moonstruck, 1995's Congo, and Doubt? Yes, Meryl Streep's Doubt, Philip Seymour Hoffman Doubt, and Wild Mountain Thyme all had something in common.
Is it the director?
The writer.
And well, yeah,
writer,
I mean, like the writer director of this movie is also the writer of all those movies.
Yeah, his name is John Patrick Shanley. He's an Oscar-winning writer and occasional director. This is his third film he's ever directed. But what are we talking about? Cinema Bias. Cinema Bias is a show where we dive into our personal biases when it comes to different genres, directors, writers, actors, whatever the fuck that really makes us gives us biases for or against these things. So, Drew, I kind of want to know moving forward, what was your bias for or against this movie?
This movie? I'd never heard of Wild Mountain Thyme, the 2020 Emily Blunt and what's his name, Jamie Dornan, John Hamm, and Christopher Walken Irish extravaganza. That is this film. I walked into it kind of sleepy this morning and kind of cranky and sort of feeling like, there's certain thing about, and I don't want to make vast, gross generalizations about types of people, but I've just never really gotten the Irish thing, like personally. Like I don't get it. Like I don't get like the folktale and the lore. I had friends in high school who were really, or middle school that were really, really into like fairies and like, like wearing kilts and like all the whole thing. And it just never. I think it just like never struck a chord with me. And so like I know.
On that note, I'm just going to be hosting tonight's episode.
But it never really struck a chord with me. So I was kind of walking into this with like prejudice of being like, I don't need to watch live action Brave over here. I don't need to see like, people like in horses and like running around.
Country. Brave is set in a different country.
Yeah, Brave is set in a different country. That's what I'm saying. I don't need to be sitting here talking about my gross biases about stuff. We're talking about, or like earlier, I was like, I think I like Ewan Rion, and he's the only Irish person I like. And I was like, oh wait, he's like Welsh. So,
well, did you have any ideas about it? Did you even know this movie was a thing? Did you hear any promos?
Like, let's be honest, Alex. Nobody knows this movie is a thing. Guys, raise a show of hands if you like know that Wild Mountain Thyme, the 2020 movie starring again Emily Blunt, John Hamm, Jamie Dornan, and Christopher Walken, is indeed a film that exists by the guy who wrote Moonstruck.
I have I had this movie recommended to me by like 7 different guys.
But yeah, because you have a thing and that's like Ireland.
No, and they don't come out with a new movie. No, that's saying they had nothing to do with Ireland. And these are like action army bros.
But they know one thing about you, and it's that you love
No, and they didn't say it. They didn't say because of that, but they were like, Alex, you like weird shit. watch this movie. And I was like, okay. And they gave me no context. And so all I knew, it was going to be, supposedly it's going to be weird, but I honestly thought it was going to be a very traditional romance. But this is definitely a weird movie. It's an interesting movie. Going into it, my personal bias was, I was like, Jamie Dornan? Mr. 50 Shades?
Do you like Jamie Dornan or not? Are you pro Jamie Dornan?
The only thing up until this movie that I've seen him in personally was 50 Shades of Grey, that trilogy. And
so I was Synchronic. He's pretty good in Synchronic.
I've heard good things about him in other shows and movies and stuff, but that's the only reference point I had. And he's even said it a handful of times in interviews. He hated doing those movies. It was like Robert Pattinson doing Twilight, which is kind of a fun connection.
Kristen Stewart doing Twilight.
It's very true. Yeah, and so, but so going into this, I had very limited knowledge of his range, very limited knowledge of him doing anything outside of like a traditional heteronormative, sexy male. Mm-hmm. kind of thing. Well, overall, what were some of your expectations going into this movie?
I didn't really have any. Like, I didn't even really know the cast list until I saw it on Hulu. I was accurately able to guess that this was a 2020 film. I'm not sure if it was like produced in 2020 or just came out on Hulu in 2020, but it was very clearly like somebody's weird idea that they got made or got released over like Hulu because of the pandemic. Because it definitely doesn't feel like something that would have been in theaters, I don't think. I mean, it's cool, but it feels like a very like indie film. I would say that. Like, it definitely feels like an indie property that it happens to have like a bunch of celebrities, which a lot of times it does. Like a lot of indie movies that do the festival circuit like have big cast lists, and this feels like that kind of movie. Ooh, new subscriber, Poet DeLorean. That's cool. Thank you for subscribing. I wish my thing made a little noise, but right now it's not making any noises. I don't know why.
Thank you.
Thanks for subscribing though.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. This movie just really slipped on by, and I feel like, considering the stars, very few people, I feel like, have any real... I remember seeing the trailer for it, which made me think it was going to be a very traditional rom-com, a very boring rom-com. I didn't know Christopher Walken was in it. I didn't know John Hamm was in it. I just knew Emily Blunt as well as Jamie Dornan. And so going into this movie, I just expected basic rom-com set in Ireland. Now, something I did not expect going into this movie is that we've kind of mentioned it a little bit, is that this movie is really weird. It tackles a lot of interesting ideas regarding romance, regarding mental health, which I was very surprised. I was like, what? But also this idea of of relationships, platonic relationships, as well as romantic relationships as well within this movie. So it's definitely a weird one. Is there anything about this movie in particular that kind of called out to you, or did you think that you're like, this is like so fucked up, or were you like, oh, that's pretty awesome?
It wasn't like super fucked up. I guess like maybe I was just like, this movie doesn't seem like a very me kind of movie, but not because it's like fucked up, just because it just like didn't. It's a romance. It's not really my cup of tea necessarily. But that being said, I ended up really liking a lot of it. Like I found. This is the alert box is driving me nuts. I feel like I ended up liking it a lot more as it went on than I did originally. Like I really thought I was going to be just like, I guess boring, I guess is the worst thing I could call like movies like this, like romance movies, like bodice rippers. They're the kind of stuff that my mom really likes. She's really into that kind of stuff, and I'm less so like interested in like just generalized romance movies. Especially ones that like take place in like an exotic locale. And yes, Ireland is exotic and like have to do with like the idea of like, and this is a theme in the movie, is like the idea of like what romance is and people who are romantic and what that means. Like I'm just kind of like, okay, but like enough.
I absolutely agree. It's also in many aspects, but also I've never seen Emily Blunt so thirsty in a movie.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire movie, she knows exactly what she wants, compared to Jamie Dornan, who's constantly questioning what he wants, and as well as other people is questioning him and what his motives. Why does he want this? Should he want this? Will he want this? And versus her, she knows right away. She's like, she's very affirmative with her feelings, not only for Jamie Dornan from the get-go. She's like, oh, I love that man. Wait, I gotta have that man. And I'm like, girl. I love that confidence. Yeah, I've never really seen her in a movie where it just like really focuses so much on not so much sexual tension, because there's like a few kisses at the very end, but it's a movie that I feel like it wound up for 90% of it, and you're like, and nothing happened until like the last 5 minutes in terms of like romance. So
welcome to romance movies. They're all about the build up and no payoff. It's like edging for women. I don't know. It's literally just like that. Like you just spend the entire movie being like, are they gonna just fucking kiss or say that they like each other, because they both like each other a whole bunch. And maybe that's like some of my frustration with the genre is I'm just like, guys, come on, like we figured this part out. Let's get the thing moving. Or maybe I like movies where like they fight more often or they like flirt differently. They don't flirt by being like, I love you, but I'm not going to say it. Like they flirt by being like, I hate you, but secretly I love you.
I mean, there's different style of rom-coms. Like I love Philadelphia Story. Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. I mean, I love the beautiful Jimmy Stewart. Oh, he's so beautiful in that movie. Yeah, as well as if you can go on to a little bit later with like Sabrina and Humphrey Bogart and Audrey Hepburn. Yeah, I definitely agree with you as far as like how romance and rom-coms have changed. The way couples really talk about the whole idea of actively having affection for each other, but also vocally having affection for each other, it takes time.
I mean, like let me put it this way: my version of this that really works for me is like Wuthering Heights. Like that's my version of this working. Is like, okay, well, like, but like they hate each other, right? Like they gotta like, the thing is that like he's gonna spend the rest of his like waking life like ruining the day that she died, so he couldn't like haunt the grounds with her because like they're ghosts together, and they just hate each other so much their like ghost life lasts forever, and they live on the moors, and Heathcliff is just like the bomb, even though he's the worst. He's literally the worst. He's just an angry adopted kid who has like a grudge on his shoulder, and I fucking love it. Like that I love. So give me more of that.
I dig it. Well, speaking of giving me all these really interesting characters and all that good stuff, I'm going to need you to give me the plot.
Oh, man. Can I get a second? I'm still trying to figure out this Streamlabs stuff and try to make this work. So give me 2 seconds. Unless you want me to do it very distractedly, which I'm very happy to do, because there is parts of this movie that I will admit, I straight up did not understand what was going on for like a lot of this film.
You know what?
There was so much of this film that I was like, for a plot that seems like it sort of should be easy for me to understand, there's so much that I'm not getting. So I'll be interested in seeing what happens here.
Actually, I think that would be the best way to go about this segment of Tell Me the Plot. I think that's kind of perfect, really. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put 1 minute on the clock. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Starting now.
So it's like weird. It's this guy. Let's just jump to the end. He thinks he's a bee, I guess, and he spent his entire life thinking he was a bee, but it's okay because this girl that he loves, who owns the fence, I guess, between their two properties, and it's like this ongoing lore. Also, he might have fucked a donkey at some point. I don't know. This is making the movie sound way cooler than it is in terms of like weird shit. But then John Hamm comes to town. He's like, I'm a banker who wants to be a farmer, and it's very much that scene. It's very much like kind of the beats of Moonstruck, where it's sort of like, you know, she's thinking maybe she should be with one guy, and then she's like, well, maybe I'll be with the other guy. But instead of like crazy ass Nick Cage, you just got like weird, slightly like kooky Jamie Dornan, who's like shy, but I guess he's shy because he knows he's mentally ill, and that she's like, yeah, it's okay. Sometimes I think I'm a swan and want to kill myself. And I went to New York for one day and then turned around and came back. Yeah, so that's like the whole movie. I did it.
I really want to correct you on something, but you're totally right, except the whole donkey thing. He never does it. He is practicing at one point. I do want to clarify that scene. There's one point he is practicing. He plans to propose to Emily Blunt's character, and so he practices in front of a donkey. A passerby.
No, I saw what happened. I'm just saying, the story in town is that he fucked a donkey.
Yeah, poor guy.
And it's hilarious.
He's like, damn it! It's so funny. Yeah, but you're 100% right regarding all of that. There's a few aspects regarding. She also, yeah, like you're totally right. She admits later on she doesn't think she's a swan the way he thinks he's a bee. Yeah. There's a real conversation surrounding mental illness in this movie. That's a very underlying conversation surrounding mental illness. Christopher Walken plays his dad, and the entire time he's in the process of, he is sick, he's dying, he's smoking, and all this.
So is everybody in this movie, though. Everyone is sick and dying. Like, she loses her parents like off screen randomly. People just seem to decide that there's their time to die in the plot, and they just go for it.
Well, but they're just saying, hey, I need to finish this will. Who's gonna live up to the farm? This farm has been in the family for like 200 years.
Yeah, but why was the farm ever not supposed to be in his family? So like Jamie Dornan is Christopher Walken's son, and for some reason there's this whole thing about like maybe he's not gonna get the farm, and then Christopher Walken's like, I'm gonna die now, but you definitely get the farm.
He doesn't think he could run the farm.
But we never like see that. We never actually see what that looks like. We're just told it in this weird way.
He tells him that because he says that he describes him as off kilter. He says that there's something wrong with him. He's never been able to have a relationship. He's never really been able to establish friends, let alone have a partner. He's referring to a wife. And
I get that.
But
we get the information. What I'm saying is we get the information like that. We don't see this thing progress. We just get the information like because it jumps from like her childhood to suddenly we're in like the adulthood, and we just are told that Jamie Dornan is weird, and then also told like the next scene that like Christopher Walken's still proud of him and he's still getting the farm, and like it's very I don't know, it's very show and it's very tell and not show. Like I didn't know who these people were. I didn't know like who the property owners were or what the even issue was, because the entire movie they were just kind of telling us that there was an issue, but then it would like immediately be clear that she was in love with him, so it doesn't really matter whose property the gate is on or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that doesn't take away my enjoyment from it. That was just sort of like my setup issue with it. But I did actually like how it turned out.
It was that she never told him how she felt, and he never felt comfortable enough to voice his feelings, and he was constantly trying to find a way to legitimize himself so he could eventually propose to her. Because he never felt good enough or confident enough to propose. That's why he's like, I desperately need to find this ring and everything, because I can't propose to you without the ring, which I dropped in the middle of a field. Therefore, it's really bad omen.
Yeah. I mean, that all came through. Like, that was all plot beats and they said it. What I'm saying is I don't feel like it was very earned. Like, it felt like it was just stuff that, like, we were told, it was like told to us the moment that like we meet the characters that this is like their deal. And so like, it didn't feel like I didn't know the version of Christopher Walken that wasn't impressed by his son or didn't love his son with all the respect. We hear him say that like his son is weird, but that's like it. I didn't get the sense that like I really knew why he wouldn't just inherit his dad's farm.
I kind of disagree with you on that, because I think he did voice several times at the start of the film that he loves his son. He does, but he is not confident in him as a farmer, and he's not confident in his son's ability to run the farm successfully. He just doesn't think he does it because he could do it, because he, in his words, he's off kilter. I don't think he's essentially smart enough.
Well, he's not
mentally stable enough to run a farm.
Yeah, I don't think he's like motivated to be a farmer the way that like John Hamm just shows up one day and he's like, I want to be a farmer now. Like, that's been my dream since I was a kid. I was like, yeah, I was kind of hoping like John Hamm was going to come and take the farm, because he seemed to have an interest in it, and Jamie Dornan does not seem to have an interest in running a farm.
I disagree. He likes the idea of being a farmer, but he doesn't actually like to be it.
Jamie Dornan just straight up does not care about farming. Like though, we just see him like with his like weird middle. I don't understand like why he likes her, but I don't understand like why he's necessarily the best inheritor of the farmland.
Because
Saying, like,
John Hamm doesn't know how to do it. He doesn't. He could never be a farmer. He gave him a white jacket,
right?
A fancy white
raincoat. I get that.
He could never be a farmer with that.
Well, Jamie Dornan thinks he's a bee.
That car with a very fancy car, and he's like,
yeah. I would say still that compared to like thinking that you're a bee and like spending your whole life being like, I can't talk to people because I'm a bee. Like I'm a literal bee. And I'm going around sipping nectar from like honey, like or whatever bees do, and being like, "That's my ish." That's why this entire movie I haven't spoken my unrequited love. I'm like sitting here like Snape, like watching all this shit go down because I think I'm a bee.
No, he did confess once to a former love, and she made fun of him and made it a thing, and he regretted it because he questioned himself for many years after. Yeah. And that's why he was so hesitant to tell her, because he mentioned, "You will treat me different for the rest of our lives." Everyone knows that he hears voices at this point.
I guess it's just more like I don't. Again, so this is just like a very romantic plot. Like it's very much like this unspoken thing, and like what is it? What is this strong silent man not telling me? Like what is this thing that's making him so mysterious and blah blah? And then it's like, oh, he revealed himself to me, like, and that has made him vulnerable. It's just not my bag. Like I get it, and I understand the concept of it, and your explanation makes total sense. It's just not my type of framing device. Like we get into this movie by hearing this woman do a voiceover where she's like introducing us to her as a kid, introducing us to this idea that her dad called her a swan. Then immediately we see her as an adult, and she's like, "Let me tell you about the story that like Mr. Muldoon died." And I was like, "Okay, wait, what?" And then we switched to like Christopher Walken's house, and it took me half the movie to realize that she was talking about her own father. And I was like, "Wait, like this was so confusing for me for like half the film." And maybe it's just the like logistical framework of her needing to think she's a swan, but like I don't. Just right out of the gate, right out of the like 2-door gate, I didn't understand like why she's referring to her dad as a Mr. Muldoon.
I definitely agree with you there. This is a very weird film. It's a very messy written film. I feel like there was a lot of scenes that were cut out. There's a lot of essential questions that were just insinuated I wish there was an expansion on, but or at the same time, or just cut more out where it's just easier. A lot of the information is easier to digest. But thing is, something I really do think is really nice about this movie is I actually really think the cinematography and just the general aesthetic of the film is very crystal clear. Everything is actually very attractive. And for being an indie movie, I didn't expect it to look as big budget as it did, because it's a very small film. It really is. But these grand scope shots combined with the clarity of these shots and these kind of experimental camera angles that really really surprised me as well. I enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a cute film. Like I'm not gonna say that it's not, and definitely like by the end I was like, oh, this is interesting. I did have that Moonstruck element where I was like, you know, the guy's like the it's not really like a love triangle. It's more like this guy shows up and he's like, I'm here to like show you what the other side is like, but I'm not like really even a bad guy. I just like exist to like prove even harder like why these two other people should be in love. Just kind of like what's the name? Danny Aoda, what is his name, from Moonstruck? Like he's just a nice guy who wants to marry Cher and wants to take her to the opera. And they have like a scene that's almost exactly mirroring that, where they go to the ballet in New York.
What's funny is that John Hamm's character is that I understand this. They're essentially meant to be polar opposites. Jamie Dornan, obviously, he's very sensitive. He's very shy. He knows what he wants, but he doesn't know how to go about it, and he's just very uncomfortable.
He can't be a bee. You're a human man.
He can't be a bee. He's just in a very weird situation. Compared to John Hamm, who's very sure of himself, very confident. He's from the city, and he wants to be a farmer. And at least he loves the idea of being a farmer. And he lives in New York City. So there's a lot of flying for him, which is very surprising. I'm like, why don't you just live in Dublin? Why don't you just live in London or something? Why does it have to be New York City?
I think it's because like his family has property in London and probably does not have property upstate. It's more, I think, that like he feels this connection that he can like he has this romantic ideal kind of like she does of like what his life would be like if he lived on the farm. Like he'd get to marry someone like her.
Oh no, I get it. It's just he's his nephew. I mean, so they're cousins, first cousins. And so the process, and also he travels to and from this small Irish town to New York City like 3 or 4 different times in a span of like 2 months. That is like a lot of money right there. And he's so casual about it and he throws it away. And I'm just like, that's a really that's like a $3,000 flight right there. And he mentions that's first class and everything. I'm like, oh, so you're spending like over $10,000 in a span of a month on travel.
He probably has this frequent
and you're there for like a day and a half, and you're just like really casual about this. Okay, no big deal.
You don't know frequent flyer people like they. My ex-husband was like that. You just you rack up enough miles, and like every trip is free. It's like up in the air. But I was gonna say like. It's weird because I kind of did want him to end up with her because in a way they both had the same kind of mentality, which was like this sort of grounded to earth, but like wanting this romance, this grand romance in their life. Like he wanted to be a farmer. She wants this like epic story. And I feel like Jamie Dornan and his like weirdness that we get revealed at the end is like, he thinks he's a bee, but like, this is not anything that's related to the plot or anything that's conveyed to us about like what kind of person he is. He's just kind of been dodgy the whole movie. And I was kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I don't think that I like the idea of them together, but I don't think that their characters would have been good together because she talks the entire time about the romance behind it. Oh, I think I'm a swan. I believe we are connected to the earth, all that good stuff. He talks about marriage like it's a legal contract and very little romance. So their mentality behind not only the marriage, but just a partnership is very, very different. And I mean, even when they were at the dinner in New York City after the ballet and she's crying and he's like, oh, you were beautiful at the ballet. And she admits something to him that was very romantic. And he's like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and her response is like, well, it's about romantic as like a banker who wishes he was a farmer. And like, it's as much of a romantic flight of fancy as like his thing. And I think that's like kind of I think there's like almost a better story to be told about like her bringing that out of him and like him sort of following his passion. Because like at the end, he's a perfectly nice guy. He ends up with like, it's sort of implied just another Irish or like an American chick.
But is he sexy?
Sorry?
I think John Hamm is very sexy. I do want to clarify.
Of course, he's John Hamm. He's not going to have any problem in the world.
No, absolutely no problem. He's an incredibly attractive man. But I think Emily Blunt's character, she does not get thirsty for John Hamm. She gets thirsty for Jamie Dornan. When he says like these random quotes, and she's like, "Oh, I must have that man." She has anything anywhere close to that for him.
Yeah.
He's John Hamm's a distraction.
No, I think he's more like a tool that they're both kind of using to leverage the other one. Like they're both trying to get a rise out of each other by using John Hamm. And for that, it also kind of reminds me of Moonstruck, like with the brother and the fiance. And it just kind of feels like I feel bad for the John Hamm character. Like these two people with their weird ass like innuendo that's been going on since they were children. And Christopher Walken selling off like a parcel of his land to the neighbor because his son was strange. It almost seems like the side plot of a better movie was like in there somewhere, or like a more interesting situation, which is like a guy getting dumped by a woman that he has like followed like this whimsical ideal of love and becoming a farmer, and he followed her all the way to Ireland, and whoops, now she's like in love with his cousin.
And he just ends up falling in love with a girl on a plane on the way back. And she's like,
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think he's open to it. He's just like looking for a wife. That I get that. Like that was somebody that I married.
I don't care who it is.
Like at the point in their life where they were looking for a wife. Doesn't really matter who it is. They were just looking for one. Good Fortuna says, fatally undermined by dodgy accents. God, we gotta talk about that. And questionable story. Wild Mountain Thyme is a baffling misfire for a talented filmmaker and an impressive cast. I feel like that isn't something you wrote. Good for the Tuna. You can tell me if I'm wrong. It feels like something you wrote, you like copy and pasted from IMDb, which is fair. But like, what source are you using here?
I mean, everything that I do think everything you're saying, good for the tuna, which I really like that name. I think it's on point, honestly.
He
I
said he was
do
trying to
think
order pizza, and he ended up here, which is also on point.
the
Sometimes people find this station.
I do think the accents are horribly like I don't know who told Christopher
Like,
Walken to be in this movie. It's so
oh
ridiculous.
my god! I was just like, he appeared on screen, and Eric was like, "Oh god." He's like, "That's just taking the worst idea that you could possibly have. Like, who thought that Christopher Walken doing an Irish accent was something anybody needed in their life?"
I was like, but also I didn't mind it personally because I heard it and I'm like, this is so ridiculous. And I that's what I took it at that kind of value, to be honest.
I mean, I kind of took the movie at that value, but then the movie is sort of like, it almost does have this Regency era feel to it. It's very like kind of Jane Austen in a way. It's like the stakes aren't super high. Like it feels like this very antiquated throwback. Like I'm not sure when it's supposed to be set. You realize like partway through that it's supposed to be set in current day. It just feels like it's supposed to be set in like the early 1900s. So that's just a strange thing about the movie. Like at first everyone's wearing cloaks and capes and you're like, oh, this movie's old timey. And then you're like, oh no, this movie takes place like today.
Honestly, yeah, when I was in Ireland, there was a lot of people casually wearing cloaks, which I was very surprised about.
I mean, especially
especially when we visited and took like tours and stuff in the countryside, there was a lot of cloaks. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
a lot of people just casually hanging out like in these big old cloak things. Okay. A little Hogwarts action. I dig it.
It just kind of makes it just makes the part where John Hamm comes in and he's very clearly of like, you know, he's the opposite of anachronistic. Yeah. Like he's just so, oops, I did my makeup wrong. He's just so of this time and of this place that when we see John Hamm, I mean, no, what am I talking about? He was famous for Mad Men, but like when he appears in this movie, you're just like, oh, that's a 21st century guy living in 2021, getting his Freako miles stacked up and like borrowing a Rolls Royce because he can.
It was, but thing is also you can tell the values are very, very different for them. They're meant to be obviously very much polar opposites. John Hamm, he buys him a white rain jacket or whatever because he thought it looked nice for him, and that's fine. It really is, because it is a nice jacket. But even Emily Blunt, she asked him like, what the fuck are you doing with that here? Like,
yeah, but it's not like Jamie Dornan. It's almost like I could see them being cousins because it's not like Jamie Dornan's so practical. He walks around with like a metal detector, and we find out why. But like the guy has got his head up in the clouds. It's not like he's so
But he's also
like the movie has this romantic idea about like what men are supposed to be like, right? And they're supposed to be a certain kind of strange, not this other kind of strange. She's like, I want him to like say, I want him to. He smells like soap, and real men should smell like manure or like whatever. And you're just like, this is a little antiquated and like a little bit like this throwback of like masculinity that we're trying to like hodgepodge into this idea of new masculinity, and it's kind of a little bit bad.
Well, when she said that, when she talked about what the kind of man that she wanted, it sounded more like I want a partner that smells like home. I don't want something new. I don't want something pretty and flashy.
What she says is
money. I want someone that smells like mud and shit. I want someone that smells like home.
Except what she said, what she actually said was men should smell bad, or like she was like, men should smell bad and be tall because it equals out a woman's goodness.
Yeah, those are weird nuts. That's like really, really weird. There's a lot of like random little moments.
I'm just saying, like, I don't think these characters are supposed to be like good people or sane people. Like, I don't think they're not good or not sane. I'm just saying that these aren't like ideals that I feel like we as a modern society should necessarily hold up as like a good eye. Like, she's very much of this provincial town, and she's someone that would really hate Belle in Beauty and the Beast, probably. Like, she's got these ideas about like the gender norms that are kind of whack if she thinks John Hamm's bad because he smells like soap.
And also, something I thought was really, really funny is just the way we are introduced to her character in particular. So, real quickly, I do want to kind of go into like one of our other segments, specifically. I do want to kind of talk specifically about favorites of this movie, because I do want to talk about one of my favorite moments of the movie, because this movie is a weird movie. We both know there's a lot of weird, like the writing is really funky, all that good stuff. I did mention that I really did like the cinematography, but one I think I really, really liked about this movie in particular is I really liked her character introduction. In particular, she almost has this ethereal vibe about her. When we meet her, we find out her mother is on the verge of death. We know at this point her father is dead, and when we meet her, she's like, it's
Actually,
raining
that's what's
profusely.
really weird. Well, I don't think
Yeah,
we know her father's dead because we see her father as a young kid, and then we see her when she's grown up, and he like slaps the horse, and then suddenly the next thing we know, somebody
we
named Muldoon is dead. It took me a
he
really
no
long time to pick up that her dad was
you
dead.
see because something happens with a shotgun at some point.
Oh, I didn't see that part.
He shoots. It's mentioned quite a few times throughout the movie that he loves shooting crows. Crows come and kill shit around him all the time, but something happened with a gun. So I don't know if it's a suicide thing, to be honest,
We never see
or
it.
yeah, I know. But the thing is, you hear a shotgun and you see birds.
Well, yeah, but like that's
It.
pretty vague. I didn't know what the hell happened
Yeah,
there. I just
exactly. But then
no
there's
idea.
a funeral.
And it's like he's
So
supposed
we
to be,
don't.
she's the wife, the mom is supposed to be sick, but then also Christopher Walken's supposed to be sick, and it's like these two people with their sick parents whose parents die immediately. Like it's like her mom dies, and then Christopher Walken's like, that seems like a good idea, and goes home that night and it's like, I'm going to die tonight. Like, and it's just like straight up like, Jamie Dornan, I'm going to die tonight. And Jamie Dornan's like, don't make that decision. He's like, but I'm dying tonight. And like the next thing you know, he's dead, and I'm good on him. Get that paycheck and go.
I thought in spite of he has like some of the most ridiculous the most ridiculous. This is by far one, in my opinion, one of his most ridiculous roles. The accent is absolutely laughable and bonkers, but by golly, did I enjoy him in it? It just feels like a movie that he just had a hoot filming, and he just wanted to hang out in Ireland.
Yeah.
And he just collected that paycheck, and I'm like, I get it.
Yeah, I'm interested in like knowing. You know, I interviewed Christopher Walken once, and I'm like interested in knowing. Like, he just kind of takes projects, I think, sometimes because he's wants to go visit this place, or he wants to do that thing, or he wants to sing now, and this is what he's going to be doing.
I'm not so. I wouldn't wouldn't be surprised. Do you have any favorite moments, scenes, characters, or anything from this movie in particular?
I mean, I don't want to make this like a short episode, but like, I mean, the last part of this movie like works a lot better, I think, for me than the first part of it. Like, in which things are just very confusing and people are talking very lyrically, and you don't really have a sense of like what time or space you're in, or who these characters are to each other, or why you need to care. But I think the second half you start getting like the thesis of the film, which isn't that different than the thesis of, I think, like the Far Superior, like Moonlight, Moonstruck, which is like, yeah, this woman looking for romance in her life, and she's marrying this one guy who's providing her with all like the partnership and sort of equality that she should ostensibly want in like a modern feminist idea of romance, but like for some reason she's more attracted to her brother, or his brother, who is a, you know, very rough and tumble, like sweaty guy who needs to, like, he's sort of like a beast, and she needs to like tame him, and he only has one hand instead of thinking he would be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. She definitely has like this. I don't like this idea of, and like this idea of like a countryman versus a city man. I really don't like that, because I don't like the idea of how it perpetrates like gender stereotypes. But something I really did like about their interactions in some of the final scenes is that you see her the way she talks is different in the final few scenes. Specifically, you see, like I kind of mentioned before, the tension is rising up. She changes her outfits, and she's pretty much like posing the entire time. She's like,
cosplaying.
Are you going to acknowledge me yet? See, aren't I sexy? Aren't I pretty? Please.
Oh yeah, she starts acting like she's in a movie,
begging him to acknowledge her as a woman. And it's just, and she asks him, "Are you gay?" Because that's totally fine if you're gay. I just want to know.
I just got my first food for the week here, so I'm going to eat a little bit on camera, and that's going to be gross, but we're all going to sit through it and live through it together.
Mukbang.
I've been starving.
I dig the mukbang. Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
That, and she offers him Guinness, and I was saying tired, and actually because of that scene, I was like, now I kind of want a Guinness. And she asked him, and they share Guinnesses together, and then there's this weird conversation regarding glass. Anything that comes from a glass bottle tastes like teeth. Which I'm like, where did this come from? And I thought that was kind of that kind of random line that's consistently mentioned throughout the movie is it's such a weird saying to choose for a movie like this that's like focused on romance, or at least an idea of romance, because I don't feel like this movie is romantic at all outside of the last like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think this movie definitely like wants to be a little bit quirkier than it is, and this like it shoots for a certain kind of idea that these characters are strange, and it's like, well, what would strange people say? Mm-hmm. And kind of like just hold something in.
Mm-hmm.
But
something. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, I'm chewing.
Oh, there's something. One of the things I never really thought about until someone brought it to my attention, and he was like, Alex, what'd you think of this movie? What'd you think of this character? And I was like, I don't know, it's weird, but I dig it. I mean, it's fine. He's not exactly breaking boundaries in any case. And he mentioned, I loved the movie, and I was like, tell me why. And he said, I saw myself in Jamie Dornan's character in many different ways. And I was like, please explain further. And he's like, and he told me, I don't know if you knew this, but I have autism. I'm on the spectrum. And he saw himself quite a bit in Jamie Dornan's character. And the way he mentioned like a few mannerisms regarding the way he did that, mm-hmm. and like against the wall, mm-hmm. kind of thing. He did that a few times as like trying to when he's trying to figure something out. Mm-hmm. And he has to touch something to almost have to create some kind of sensation. There's that the way he does isolate himself purposely. The constant feelings of self-doubt for people not liking him, the idea that he's hiding his true nature, what he believes is his true nature, out of complete fear after discussing it with who he thought was his first love, out of complete fear from his family as well as people in town, and they kind of developed these kind of rumors surrounding him and his behavior. And my friend told me, he's like, yeah, in many ways it's not, I don't think it's meant to be a movie about autism, but as someone with autism, I just saw myself in his character so much more than I think that was intended. Because I don't know if it's a movie about autism. I don't know if it's truly a movie about mental illness, and I don't know. It's never mentioned that his character is the one that's on the spectrum, has autism, or has anything like that.
I don't think he would have words for it. Like, again, This movie kind of takes place in an antiquated idea of time.
Yeah, it's like a weird fantasy land, and there's a handful of sayings just mentioning off kilter. He has the illness. And his uncle on his mom's side also committed suicide, and there's this, and his father, Christopher Walken, is nervous for him because he thinks they're similar in behavior. Yeah. He calls him mad a few times. He hears voices and he's swinging at him with an oar. Mm-hmm. So there, in terms of mental, because like I don't know about mental illness all that much, to be honest. But when he told me this, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can definitely see, after hearing that kind of perspective on that character, that made me appreciate his character a lot more overall, and why it is so difficult for him to initiate any kind of contact with Emily Blunt's character, especially on that level versus like a friendship.
It's a thorny topic because you get into the idea of like romanticizing quirks as mental illness, and you get into the idea of like this manic pixie dream girl thing that was like a few years back, and it's like the differentiation between what it is to go through mental illness and what it is to romanticize mental illness or suicide or thoughts or habit, like or pathological or symptomatic issues, and turn them into some like part of a romance, bodice ripping concept is I mean, there's absolutely, there should be representation in Hollywood and in movies about people who fall in love and have different issues. I think that's actually covered really well in a lot of TV shows these days. Like a lot of shows I feel like are able to deal with the nuance of that better, I think, probably than movies can, because movies just don't have a long enough timeline to really delve into like what it is like to be in someone's head psychologically if they're not the main person.
Yeah, it could be, yeah, absolutely.
That's why we have so many TV shows about like detectives who have like, OCD or drug addiction or something like that, because like we can explore it on a long enough timeline and kind of give it not like Monk is the most nuanced show, but we can sort of give it a little bit more nuance than just sort of being like Jamie Dornan talks to the fairies.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, that's something I actually thought was kind of weird to think about, is that the setting of Ireland is actually presented in reality. There is no moment, there's no magic, there's no fairies, but there is in where the space that they live in, it's kind of a weird.
I mean, it's raining all the time in very magical ways. It rains when it like wants to, when the plot needs to.
That is Ireland.
Yeah.
It literally rains like 200 days of the year. So at least somewhere on the island, it rains like 200 days of the year. So it's pretty darn constant. And having like rain appropriate clothing is something you always have to be prepared with. So having a white raincoat is especially frustrating. But yeah, it's definitely I do feel like the setting of Ireland is almost shot through this fantastical lens where, yes, it is obviously a real place, but at the same time it doesn't feel like a real place. Like the vocabulary that everyone in town speaks with is very weird. It's very, I don't like to say old timey.
It really was a shock when John Hamm comes into this movie, because up until now you could have thought like we were taking bets on like whether this movie takes place in like the 1900s or early 20th century. Like there's no sense of it being
a movie that
takes place now.
You see like modern-ish clothes here and there. Like you see like fancy rubber boots, and
you watch people like eating by candlelight, basically. Like, well, a lot of the early scenes are like nighttime scenes that are basically by candlelight. Like, it's not a sense of like there being electricity, and she's riding a horse. So,
well, she lives on a farm. Yeah, and there's this there's a lot of symbolism regarding the relationship with animals, like this idea that their relationship is this horse is represented by this horse, essentially, that she is constantly trying to catch. At the beginning of the film, she's trying to catch it. She ends up getting it, but the horse lets out again. And eventually the horse comes to them as a couple at the very end when they actually are together. And like you see like the horse, when they're at the house in the final scenes, like the horse is trying to kick through the front door at the barn, and it knocks over a bunch of shit.
I almost wish the bee thing had been built up a little bit more. I wish we had seen some bees over the course of this film, or like.
I mean, there were a few bees. Like there was some buzzing, and there was like a few throwaway moments regarding bees. Like there was like a moment where there was a few moments at the very beginning when you see them as children. He puts the flower up to his nose. He gets pollen on his nose, and he sees bees, and he's following a bee. And a girl makes fun of him because she's like, "You have pollen on your nose," and he's like, "What?"
Yeah, Eric, you missed the part where this guy thinks she's a bee.
It was like in the opening. It was one of the opening scenes. There was another scene where he catches.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, he catches like a bee in his kitchen or something, but he catches it like through a cup and he releases it outside his house. But he's so gentle with this bee, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just savoring this moment with this bee."
Yeah, Eric, I think Eric, it'd be really funny for you to come back in and watch the rest of this movie, because we got up to the part where, like, yeah, they're all eating by candlelight. It seems like it takes place in the 1900s, and like John Hamm doesn't exist yet. So then, like, yeah. So just to catch you up real quick, NerdChronic. Turns out they live in the present day, and they all decide to get the parents both decide to get sick and die from both sides of that farm community. And it turns out, like, remember how we thought there was a bunch of people involved? No, there's just like her parents, who I guess she referred to as Mr. Muldoon. That's her dad. And the whole landownery thing is like not really an element. She just owns part of the land that they have, and he's going to give it to his son, who is that guy anyway. But turns out he believes he's a bee, and that's not a problem. It's just a thing that happens. That's revealed at the end of the movie. Is that he thinks he's a bee, and John Hamm was a banker, who actually was a banker, but wanted to be a farmer for a hot minute, because they live in like fun Victorian times. In another way, this movie is just the village told from the perspective of someone visiting the
Oh
village.
my gosh, right? It's
Like this movie is just like they're just like, oh, it'd be fun to do old timey stuff and like live like it's colonial Williamsburg, but in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one night Christopher just walking after seeing her mom die, just all of a sudden is like, you know what? That seems like a good idea, and goes home and is like, I will die tonight. And Damien Dorman's like, no, and he's like, nope, I will. And guess what? I didn't tell you that I was ever proud of you, but I am. And you're like, well, as far as we knew, the last thing we heard about him was like the scene that we saw in NerdChronic. So I never knew that he wasn't proud of him. I didn't also know that that was his son. I thought that was just like a guy from the farm who was helping out.
Here,
Because they all kind of refer to each other in these very like non-familial ways. It makes it very unclear. Like if you refer to your dad as Mr. Muldoon, I don't know what you want me to think for the rest of the movie, but I do not know your last name is Muldoon. Like you have not introduced yourself as like Mary Muldoon.
Well, something that's actually mentioned in the movie is that for even John Hamm, he mentions it like on the plane ride home, and he's like, you can never be direct with the Irish people. You have to you can't directly address them by name, things like that. Or
that's interesting. I feel like once John Hamm enters the movie clears itself up a lot, and you start realizing these people just like want to be a certain kind of way, or they just have like a very whimsical idea. Like it is like the village. It's like they've chosen to self-isolate and live their lives in like a very Mary Ellen Lauren from middle school kind of way.
It's almost
like they want a Little Women in.
Almost.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Vernon.
Hey, Vernon. Boom. Yeah, it is very much like Brigadoon as well. The Gene Kelly musical. Have you seen it?
No, but I know what Brigadoon is. It is sort of like Brigadoon, but Brigadoon actually it is like a fantasy world, right? Like it's not like a self-crafted world. Yeah. At one point, John Hamm drives up in like a Rolls Royce, and he's like, "Hey, look at my cool car." And Christopher Walken's like, that is the coolest car me ever have seen." And you're like, "Oh God, what is he doing here?"
But then Emily Blunt, she criticizes him, and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing with that car?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just wanted."
I think isn't Jamie Dornan who has the issue with the car? Jamie Dornan's like, "What's that car?"
He says, "Oh, interesting. It's a nice car," but it's
Jamie Dornan gets really mad because he buys him a nice Burberry coat. That's it. John Hamm says his. Wait, if that's his son, then that makes John Hamm his cousin, right? Okay, so that's his cousin.
They're first cousins.
They're first cousins. They're actually the movie would posit that they could not be more different, but in actuality, they're very much alike in that they're both like have this whimsical sort of streak in them where they are sort of self-possessed men who have this idea of who they want to be, and it's very different than what reality sees them as. So John Hamm is a banker who wants to become a farmer, but that's not practical because he's like not a farmer and he doesn't know anything about farming, and he brings Burberry coats and Rolls Royces to the farm. And Jamie Dornan is a farmer who wishes he was a bee. Full stop. That's the end of the movie. Eric is that he thinks he's a bee. No build up to that happening at all.
Mm-hmm. Also, we can't forget that I don't know if she's just trying to make him feel better or if she does genuinely feel that way, because it is hinted at pretty consistently throughout the movie, of course, but she says, "I am a swan."
She doesn't actually literally think she's a swan.
Exactly.
He apparently literally thinks he's a bee.
But she's telling him that to make him feel better and just make him feel just more comfortable with talking.
Again, so that goes to this idea of like what we romanticize about mental illness. If this movie really wants to posit that he hears voices and that he has this shameful secret of thinking that he was a bee, and that's the thing that he whispers to that one woman in that scene where they're running around in the village, and he's like, "I have this little tinniness in my head." Like he's practically, for all intents and purposes, like he knows that he's probably not capable of running a farm by himself. Like he knows that he doesn't have the mental faculties to hold a lifestyle down that would require scheduling and doing all this stuff. Like he just knows that there's a part of him that is not suited for this lifestyle. And maybe Emily Blunt and him will manage that out, and maybe they won't. But like there's a practicality issue that's involved here if like you really can't get off an obsessive thought of thinking that you are a bee, or like what that would translate to, or if you can't stop mining the ground with like a metal detector because you have this obsession with finding this ring. I mean, I was watching the Life and Times of David Copperfield.
You can't propose to her without it, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, but she like had it. So yeah, I guess that was meant to be, but like also meant to be movie, but also. Guys, I mean, like, I don't know. It's The Life and Times of David Copperfield, fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Dev Patel, Tilda Swinton, Hugh Laurie. It's colorblind casting. There's a bunch of people in different roles for like whatever is best suited for them. Like, and it's like it's very of its time period. It's got Peter Capaldi. It's just so good. But one of the best things about it, here's Peter. Yeah, I love him so much. One of the best things about it is Hugh Laurie's character, who is portrayed as both a very like whimsical and fun and intelligent man, but also someone who's like Tilda Swinton is sort of unhappily saddled with, even though she loves him a lot, because he thinks he thinks when King George died, he got all the thoughts of King George, and now he's like obsessively writing them down, and it like causes them to like go broke and penniless while he's trying to like fly his thoughts out with a kite. And it's like this very like Mary Poppins like whimsical idea, but like how would that practically serve in like a Dickensian time period? Like terribly. Like you would be in the poorhouse very quickly. And I think this movie sort of romanticizes the idea of this bee thing and brings it very last second.
I definitely agree with you. I stand by what I said about Emily Blunt's character. I appreciate how overtly horny she is.
Yeah, she is.
I'm like, hey, girl, you're that horny for him, and you're dropping these really hot lines right here, being like, oh God, I must have him. And I'm like,
girl. She does have this moment where she's like, are you gay to him? And he's like, no. And it's like, she's like, well, are you virgin? He's like, no. And I'm like, well, man, you don't have to be so defensive about it. Like, have you explored the idea that maybe you're gay and a virgin? Because, like, it does not seem like you're into her. And if you think you're a bee, I don't know what that means for what you think your reproductive system is like. He said they had, like, a girlfriend or a girl before, but, like, I don't know. This movie's, like, real quick to judge on the idea of, like, he's got to be heteromasculine, whatever. And it can't just be, like, she ends up with John Hamm and is like, okay, goodbye, bee brother-in-law now. Fly away.
Yeah, I guess so.
Repopulate via stems and pistons.
Beather-in-law.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I just want to know how this relationship is going to work on a practical level. Like, John Hamm makes the point that none of them seem to know how many acres of land they have, and he keeps me like, why don't you guys know? Like, just on a practical level, you should know which land is yours. It seems to be causing a lot of distress over who owns this area with the gate. And they're just like, what doesn't matter? The land belongs to the world, which belongs to it. And it's like all very mystical, but then a big part of the movie is who owns this one tract of property. So like you clearly see that there's a issue between how they choose to live their life and like what the practical implications for this actually are.
Yeah.
And she's got a gun straight up loaded in case she ever feels like killing herself, which is something she reveals.
She threatens to kill herself a few times. It's really, really weird.
Like she's got her whole life. We got New York she can go to for a night and then fly back and not even have it be a big deal. She can go see the opera. Not the Lion King.
One day.
Or sorry, to go see the Swan Lake. Yeah.
Yeah. Not even kidding.
So even when John Hamm shows up at the end, he has this idea. It's really funny. He calls Jamie Dornan on the phone and he's like, by the way, she's already gone to New York and kissed John Hamm after meeting him in the village. She's gone for one night, went to New York, kissed him, came back, or he kissed her. And then, during that dinner where he kissed her, he was like, what if we just got married? Because he's not, like, much more saner than his cousin is. He's just like, what if we got married? Because I have this idea in my head of, like, he presents it as if it's a practical opportunity, but really, like, the idea of him quitting and being a money manager or working in accounting or banking and going and running this farm is equally like dangerously whimsical. Like I would say like is a kind of life choice you should not make on a whim. And then when he decides to show up in town, what he does is call his cousin, who he knows likes this girl, and he knows that they like he's almost just like a MacGuffin. Like he just serves the plot as he needs to. Like he's like, I'm supposed to show up now. He calls his cousin, he's like, will you take me around to see her and introduce me to her? But like they've already met. She just came back from seeing him in New York. It just is something he's doing to like goad his cousin into falling in love with the woman he's supposed to be with. I'm not really sure what the motivation was there.
It's funky. I definitely think he also kisses her because I think he kisses her with the idea that this is going to make her feel like she might have an answer. It will be more clear at that point.
He's working off the same. So this is why I think they were the better couple. At least they're the more in tune with each other in terms of like ideologies, because she's just living in a fantasy world, and he just wants to live in that fantasy world. He wants to live in a world that's more antiquated and like has this idea of romance, and the way that she sees the world is romantic. Like he wants to be that, even though it's not practical. he wants it. He wants to quit his life and go marry a woman that he's just met, and that's no less whimsical or like any less like beautiful or operatic than like her desire to go marry this guy who like will not give her the time of day. You know?
No.
I just feel like there's a very sympathetic core to the John Hamm character that was exactly like the guy from Moonstruck, the brother-in-law from Moonstruck, but when it's played by Danny Aiello or whatever his name is, like it just doesn't come across as that guy's that sympathetic. He just comes across like a schmuck who's not Nicolas Cage. And like she's very clearly like she's like fine with him, but she's just kind of bored with him. And she's like, whatever. But then like in this movie it's John Hamm and you're like, that's fucking nuts, lady. Take the the guy offering marriage who has the Royce.
It's just really weird. It's just really funky. I watching this movie, I am actually very grateful this movie exists.
Yeah, sure.
And it's because it was a movie that I did not see coming. I just reiterating what I said earlier. I thought this was going to be a by the books rom-com. I had no idea who the director was. I had no idea he was an Oscar-winning writer, and that was behind a lot of movies like Doubt, Joe versus Behind the Volcano.
Joe versus the Volcano?
Joe
that's amazing. That's like one of my favorite movies. That actually makes sense. That tracks. I mean, that is another movie that like exists in both a very practical world at first, and then like moves to a very fantastical idea, and it's like very much that is the John Hamm story. Like that's about a guy who's like, I fucking hate living in the city. I'm going to go on an adventure.
It was his directorial debut.
That was it. He didn't direct. He directed Joe versus the Volcano. That movie is one of my favorite comedies.
I do want to clarify. He's directed 3 films. This is his third film he's ever done. The first one being Joe versus Volcano. The second one was Doubt.
Yeah, he did the play of Doubt too, right? Or am I crazy?
I don't know if he did the play, but
I thought he wrote the play. I might be crazy.
But then this is his third movie, and so
he's directed, right? But he wrote Moonstruck. Right.
Yeah, he won an Oscar for Moonstruck for Best Writing.
Which is, by the way, guys, if you haven't seen Moonstruck, go watch Moonstruck. It's so fucking good. Like that is like the peak sexy Nick Cage, and he's just got one hand, and he's just like really weird. He's just playing this thing. It's like he's very. It's again this idea, I guess, but I don't feel like Jamie Dornan was quite. Maybe they should have just picked like a Jesse Eisenberg looking Scottish Irish dude. Like they should need someone who's not Jamie Dornan to play this guy if he's supposed to be a little bit like twitchy. Because Jamie Dornan is not very strange or twitchy to me. He just reads like a very handsome man doing farm work. So like the idea of him being weird or a bee man didn't really come across until he just tells us, "I'm a bee man. I'm a bee. Here's a man." That's why she's like, "What is your hang up? Why don't you love me?" And he's like, "It's because, damn it, I think I'm a bee." And you're like, "Wait, stop the movie." And the movie's like, "That's fine. We're over. It's done. That's it. That's the whole movie."
But I actually really liked Jamie Dornan in the role. It was, and I liked everyone in the movie. I thought the movie was cast really well. It was just a weird, outside of Christopher Walken, of course. Like, what the fuck are you doing in this movie?
I don't know. It's like getting a free trip to Ireland, kind of like John Hamm.
I mean, but the thing is, he's Irish, but he's not from Ireland. So
no, he's very much Italian, Irish, and Polish, I believe. He grew up in the Polish neighborhood of Queens, anyway, and was a lion tamer. I remember all of this from interviewing
John Hamm.
Not John Hamm. Sorry, Christopher Walken.
Oh, but say because I know John Hamm is from my neck of the woods down in St. Louis. Mm-hmm.
No, Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
John Hamm touched my butt once, but I didn't get to interview him. He's a very handsome man. To be fair, he did not touch my butt because he was trying to sexually harass me. He touched my butt because he thought I was his fiance, and it was a very strange moment because when I turned around, he kind of looked like my boyfriend at the time. So I was just like, oh yeah, and then I saw a bunch of my interns standing behind him going, oh my god, and I looked back over and I was like, oh fuck, and he gave me this look like, hey, oh my god, that's not my fiance. Like he looked horrified, and I was like, oh, it's fine. We're wearing the same type of dress. It's fine.
I get it. I when I was an intern at a corporate events firm in St. Louis, he taught drama classes at local high school.
Wait, in St. Louis.
In St. Louis. In my neck of the woods. And
Yeah.
so he taught drama classes and he went to high school there. It's a very nice high school.
Yes, and he went to the same
And
high school as Bo Burnham, who took not Bo Burnham, Bo Willimon, who ended up directing House of Cards. Because like I met John a second time through Bo because he was his theater teacher or something.
Yeah, the corporate event company that I interned for when I was in college, they had a charity fundraiser for that school, and he requested two things from the events when he, aside from being flown in on private plane. He requested Emo's Pizza and a Coke.
Huh?
He requested Emo's Pizza and a Coke. So I was the lowly intern that brought him an Emo's Pizza, an extra large Emo's Pizza, and a Coke. And he said, thanks. And I was like, he is absolutely as beautiful in person as he is in the movies.
I've been going to a couple premieres where he'd been out and like doing some red carpets and seeing some afterwards. You just get the sense like he really, really, really wants to be thought of as like funny. Like he's like Dan Rather, you know, like how Dan Rather was always appearing on SNL and 30 Rock because Dan Rather really like he's like a news guy, but he really wants to be like a comedian. The way that like Ari really wants to be a rapper, but he's like a news guy. Well, John Hamm's like got cast as Don Draper, but he really, really thinks he's funny. And so like it's kind of adorable to watch somebody who's that attractive feel like they're, I don't know, like they're trying to impress you with like how funny they are. Like it's like he's constantly trying to like be on and crack jokes, and I loved it. I think it's so endearing.
I find him incredibly funny. To me, he's like one of the more underrated comedic actors.
He is, you know, he's absolutely funny, but it's just like he tries really hard to be funny.
Yeah, I guess so for sure. I loved him. Him hosting SNL is actually one of my favorite SNL episodes. Period, across the board. I thought they were hilarious. He's only done it twice, but he actually turned down Alec Baldwin's role in the movie 30 Rock. In the show 30 Rock.
I think because he was probably starring in Mad Men.
Yeah, because he took a bet to star in Mad Men that was just about to start shooting, and he dropped out of 30 Rock. And Tina Fey called up Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin is
that was a much different dynamic had it been John Hamm. My God.
And as a result, John Hamm went on to play like a cameo role for a handful of episodes, essentially.
You know who else is? This is off tangent, but you know who else tries really hard to be funny, like in a way that I'm just. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying like it shows that they like sit at home and tell jokes to themselves in the mirror and like study their expressions and then go like it's something that I feel like it doesn't come naturally to them. It's just something they practice a lot and then it becomes like this performative thing. Is Bradley Cooper. I feel like Bradley Cooper really thinks he's like wants to be thought of as funny. Like the first time I saw Bradley Cooper was in Hot American Summer. That was like one of his earliest roles. And then I feel like he mostly wants to be thought of as like a very funny guy who happens to do serious work sometimes. And same with John.
Okay, so I have a very, very hard time watching that movie just because it makes me uncomfortable because I don't like watching movies where it feels embarrassing. And the entire time I'm like, this movie gives me anxiety.
I pissed myself watching that movie. I laughed so hard.
I understand why it's funny, and there's parts I do find very, very funny, and everyone's in on the joke, and I get it. It makes me so uncomfortable, but I feel that way about Curb Your Enthusiasm and Seinfeld.
So I don't like. I hate Seinfeld so I get it
so much. I hate Seinfeld so much, but I love Christopher Maloney in that movie so much.
So funny. Well, that movie is just like David Wayne stuff is just so absurdism. Like it's just based on like the idea of like taking. It's like the sketch show they used to have, The State, which was just like taking absurd ideas and just being like running with it, like just taking this like long joke about like something and just being like, yeah, I'm gonna stick my balls in it or like whatever, and just making this like highbrow concept joke that just keeps going like meta level, like. But then again, I think the same thing is very annoying when I watch it in Mr. Show. So to each their own, and to each their little hummingbird with a wife with a shotgun in her house, just whenever he flies off. This movie was bonkers.
Weird, bonkers, absolutely.
But I wonder if it would have been better because he also wrote it, didn't he? Like I feel like that because I think he adapted it off of a book he wrote, if I remember reading this correctly. I wonder if this would be serviced better. Yeah, it seemed like it was based off a book. Because it said based off of something by the same author. I wonder if this wouldn't have been served better if like he hadn't directed it, or like if he had taken different source material and sort of adapted to his vision, because I don't know. Did he write Joe versus the Volcano too? He must have, because it just feels like
He
one
did.
person.
He wrote it and directed it.
Ugh,
Mhm.
that movie is so. Have you seen that? Have you seen Joe versus the Volcano? I didn't see it up until like earlier, like the end of last
Mhm.
year, and when I watched it, I was like blown away by how much I love that movie. Like I love that. Like that might be one of my top five like rom coms of all time. It's also like a
I,
swashbuckling
I
movie.
oh
So good.
Swash. Okay, so scratch that. I have seen part of it. I watched like 20 minutes and then I stopped
So
watching it.
good. Oh my god, it's so the opening of it is so good with Dan Hedaya. Like and the dialogue. I can't believe it's the same guy because the dialogue in that movie is so dead perfect. Now I'm kind of tossing up. You haven't seen Moonstruck either, you said?
Mm-mm.
So I'm kind of debating like whether we should just do a double feature of Moonstruck and uh, Joe versus the Volcano next week, because I feel like if you like this movie, then you're bound to like these two way better movies that he's written and directed.
Well,
These
I
are
do
two
want to
way
clarify.
better, like night and day, Alex.
I do want to clarify when it comes to this movie in particular with Wild Mountain Thyme, I don't think it's a good movie, let alone a great movie. I
Well,
just
it's
think
not
it's
a
a weird
comedy.
movie. I
It sounds
also
like
think
a movie
it's
a
like
comedy.
it's a movie that's like on the that's like it feels like on the verge. It's a movie that takes itself incredibly seriously, where it
Yeah,
feels
it's
like
like
it's on
it
the
took.
verge,
Yeah,
where it can't really decide what it wants to be. Does it want to be like a weird dramedy? Does it want to be a
yeah,
romance?
I
Does it
feel you.
want to be a fantasy romance?
And it
Like,
definitely starts out like it wants to be very self-serious and like a period piece, and then like by the time it tells you that it doesn't, you're like, wait, I'm so sorry, like we're in the 21st century. I'm just catching up to like who these people are. I'm still figuring out who Muldoon is.
but
Like
also it just makes watching this movie just made me realize that I really wanted more unconventional romances, more
sure,
movies with weirder characters,
at the
with
end of the day
like
they're
these
two
random
heteronormative white people and
random
they're not
shit pulling in.
that
'Cause
weird.
I want all that.
I mean, I like it, but they're still they're
Hmm.
essentially just normal people who have some quirks. And
Absolutely,
women are very strange.
absolutely. Hmm.
I would like a movie where like a woman falls in love with an actual bee. Like that'd be some cool Charlie Kaufman shit. Like
Like
I would
so,
like
like you mean the B movie?
John Malkovich shit was like weird,
That's
quirky.
literally the B movie.
It's literally a B movie. Is that what happens in a B movie?
The movie is called B movie.
Yeah,
BEE movie. Hmm.
yeah, gotcha.
As Seinfeld voices the bee.
Yes, I've an Oprah's in it.
It's horrible.
I heard about this one. Yeah,
It's
Oprah's in it.
weird.
I know
I feel
that
like that
for
would
a
be an
fact. And
interesting
actually,
double
one time
feature.
Eric stayed up and like read me the plot of the B movie. Just read me the plot of it, and it sounded so fucking nuts. It kind of did sound like this movie. It did sound like a unrequited romance between a woman and like
And you
her.
feel like her boyfriend in the back being like,
Yeah, yeah. There's something weird about that film. Yeah.
mhm. I think Tina Fey plays the girl that plays woman, the lawyer. I could be
Does
wrong.
she? She's in a ton of movies. Is it Tina
Mhm.
Fey? Isn't it somebody else? Wait,
I
isn't
don't
it
know. I
somebody
have
else?
that in my head that's Tina Fey for some reason.
Top five B movies says NerdChronic. My Girl number one. Wicker Man number two.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I love Wicker Man. I love Wicker Man so much.
Neil LaBute look Wicker Man with Nicolas Cage. You're gonna love
Mhm.
Moonstruck, man. If you like Nicolas Cage acting about the bees, you're gonna love him talking about his hand and his
Oh
wife,
no, okay.
Johnny's
To
hand
be
and Johnny's
completely
wife.
honest, I don't know if I've ever seen the Nick Cage remake. I love the Christopher Lee.
Well, wait, does that one
Remake.
have bees involved? Are bees
Mhm.
involved in that movie?
As far as I remember, I don't remember any particular
No,
bees.
then you have no idea that what we're talking about. Nick
I
Cage's
know the scene.
remake
I know
is
the scene. It's a very
crazy.
iconic scene where he's like, ah,
No
ah,
bees. Killing me with bees will not bring back
he's
your
like has a
honey.
cap on. Oh yeah, everyone knows that scene. That's like
It's
right up there with
so
like.
good. Why is it so good? Why is it the best scene of any movie? Because he gives it his all. And when you watch Moonstruck, you'll see that's what giving it your all in a movie looks like. Jamie Dornan. That's what giving it all your all looks like. If you want to be weird, let's get nuts. But don't give me this like
He's a
thing at
sexy
the
man
very
trying
end.
to get weird.
He didn't act like a goddamn bee the whole movie. You're gonna try to sell me on this shit right now? It's too late, movie. You wanted to
Oh,
be weird. He should have been weird way earlier. Uh,
well, yeah.
I'm just joking though. This actually was. I will say it. This movie really did wrap up in a way that by the time the two-third point rolled around, I was able to like suss out what kind of movie it was. And maybe I didn't realize it was the Joe versus Volcano guy, but like it did fall into that like I guess like that the Moonstruck thing, that thing where it's like yeah, the main tension of this movie is not like who she's going to end up with, but just sort of how she's going to end up with them. And there's no like real villain of the story. It's just sort of like about these people getting together.
I'm just also really glad that John Hamm, his character, again, a really great guy, genuinely good person. Like there's,
Oh, yeah, no,
like,
he's just
the
a
polar
guy.
opposite. There's no moment where you're like, this guy's an asshole. Like no,
No, he's not an
he's just,
asshole.
he's
Not a
he's
bummer.
just a man with a very different lifestyle.
Yeah, but then again, the guy isn't a
He-
bee, and she still loves him. So like, whatever.
yeah, and they're both cool for their own different reasons. But I'm very glad that John Hamm also found his. I don't
Yeah,
know.
John Hamm just met a woman on a plane, and just like in Mad Men, that seemed to do the trick, and then that was fine.
And they just clicked, and that's totally great. Great for
Well, in
them.
the sense that like she wanted to fuck John Hamm, and he was like, DTF. I don't know if he like was going to move across the country for that woman, but I think he was more like, yeah, he just had a romantic idea of what he wanted in life, and he just found.
In her defense, though, I mean, who wouldn't want to?
I mean, honestly, yeah, this woman just saw a really good opportunity where she smelled one. She's like, oh, you snore in your sleep and you need a ride and you like fucking whatever. Okay, like let's do it. And I was never worried that he wasn't going to be okay in this. He's not Danny Hale or whatever that guy's name is. He's not that guy. He's not like a schlub who's going to have trouble finding love for the rest of his life. He literally found love before she could pick him up in the car for their ride because they wrecked the car and decided they were in love, and also bees.
Bees.
Anyway, guys, that's the episode, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it. Oh my gosh.
Now, NerdChronic, do you want to come in here and do your impression of Christopher Walken doing an Irish accent?
Oh my gosh, that'd be
right now.
dope.
Like, come in there and then talk about the bees. And then it's really good. His
hear
dad died not knowing his son was so fucking weird inside. Like, he kind of knew, but thank God he went to his grave before knowing just how weird that kid was. Top 5 movie.
Well, real quickly, also along with Eric, that'd be really cool if you did. But can we hear your accent, Irish accent?
I'm Christopher Walken, and these are my bees and me honey. Hey, governor. I forget how the Irish talk. I definitely had some choice words about just Ireland culture as perceived by Americans, but like it was mostly about how I thought like Billy, what's his name, was in Brave, and I think it's true that he just was in Brave. Billy Connolly. No, I thought I was like the guy from Lemony Snicket was in the dad in Brave, and then Eric was like, no, I'm pretty sure it was Billy Connolly, and I was like, Billy Connolly was in Lemony Snicket, and we like fought about that for 5 minutes without resolving it. So if anyone wants to clarify right now, right here, whether or not Billy Connolly was in fact the guy who loved lizards or like snakes or whatever in Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events, that'd be great.
The TV show or the movie?
The movie, the one Jim Carrey.
Man, I really love Jim Carrey in that role, to be honest, as Olaf.
You said no thank you. I feel like that's trying to avoid divide by zero. I don't know what that means. Oh, I gotta watch the replay. Thought this was a fake Twilight movie. Nope.
Rude, but I get it.
No, but this movie also thinks it's a fake Twilight movie. I think in the way that like it cosplays like a fake Twilight movie, but without instead of vampires, it's about I don't know, like a perception of
reality or erotic.
You
know what? Now that I think about it, it just kind of occurred to me that this movie is okay. This movie, well, there's if you watch the trailer and everything, you kind of think it's going to go in this direction, but they don't, or you get so little out of a trailer. It's almost like Simple Favor. You watch the movie trailer and you're like, what is this? You just know a person goes missing, you think, and there's Anna Kendrick and Blair Blair what's her face.
I didn't see the trailer of that movie, but I kind of figured out what was happening within 5 minutes of watching it.
Well, I did.
I'm very good at movies, though. I'm very annoying. I'm annoyingly good at movies, so that's
I've only been able to do that for like 5 movies total, including but not limited to Shutter Island. Because my mom still thinks it against me to this day.
That movie is the basic ass pumpkin spice latte of like twist mystery thrillers. That movie is the I'm the cheese of fucking films. Like that movie's just gives you all the signposts of what's going on in that film with the duly appointed federal marshals. Anyway, Alex, so I think we have a good idea for a double feature next week. It's only like our third double feature, second or third.
Yeah. Probably? Well, I mean, like, okay, honestly, let's ham it out right now real quickly. Let's not make it a double feature because I feel like it can make it a bit crazy.
Okay. You want to just do one? What do you want? Moonstruck or versus?
Let's do Moonstruck next Tuesday, and the following week on the 29th, we can do
Hell
Go
yeah,
for
I'll take
it.
it. That's 2 weeks of movies that I like, so I'm down. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say no to that. Teamwork. It was Billy Connolly. I know because Billy Connolly was in Lemony Snicket, so you know. Like,
I just
wait till
know
you know who's
I,
in Brave.
I just know him mostly as the Black Spot from Muppet Treasure Island.
Oh, he is in Muppet Treasure Island along with Tim
Yeah, he
Curry.
plays what's his name? Jimmy's.
You know?
He plays the pirate that initially takes Jimmy under his wing, and he dies in the opening scene. And because he gets the paper with the black spot, and he's like, "Oh, the black spot," and everyone freaks.
And I also just want to say thanks. Shout out to NerdChronic who asked me, "Are you sure you're not thinking of just someone from Monty Python?" Because I said it's the guy who loves snakes, and I think she just thought I was an idiot. So just shout out to that. It's a fun little thing that was witnessed by no one, but I just want to shout it out on air. Alex, where can people find you if they were so interested?
You can find me right up here on Twitter at real_AlexMike. You can also find me doing something over the call to action podcast. So definitely give us a follow over there, though.
Okay, I'm VideoDrew, and I'm the best, and I'm the coolest, and so is Alex. And you can find me at VideoDrew across all social media. VideoDrew is one word, and it's the best word. You can also find me here on Mondays and Thursdays doing the VideoChronic Pop Quiz at 8 p.m. He's the Boondock Saints' dad, said someone inevitably in the comments. Yeah, I know. I was choosing to not say that one. I was politely choosing to avoid talking about the Boondock Saints, like most women in college courses do. Just never bring up the Boondock Saints. Is what we learn.
Movies are like really bad for a million reasons.
I just forget that movie exists and has a sequel because I just choose to live my life in a world that doesn't happen. So, guys, going forward, no more Boondock Saints. Just stop them. We need no more Boondock Saints. Okay. You can find me here Mondays, Thursdays doing VideoChronic Pop Culture Quiz. Not sure if we have something for Thursday, but we have a bunch of fun stuff coming up. Then, yeah, Live in the Dark. We had like our 1 year anniversary / soft reboot with director Nacho Vigalondo from Colossal and Time Crimes, a movie we've covered on here. That was last week. Who knows?
I'm so sad I wasn't there. I'm so sad.
Literally, who knows? Like, just give me some ideas about who we should on this week because I like the idea now that we're just finding random people that I am impressed by and asking them to come over to my house and talk about movies. We had a lot.
Well, they need to come on this show. That's what we need.
It's so much fun. Oh my god, I had so much fun.
That's what I want.
Okay, guys, I think that's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sitting through this, and I hope you enjoyed our description of this movie. You can go watch it now, but now I feel like you don't have to. But you can. Alex would probably suggest you can, and I would say it's okay. You can.
It's fine. I will never argue it's a great movie or a good movie. It's just a surprising movie, which I appreciate. Unconventional romance. Okay, and I like unconventional romance.
Now the comments are talking about the Hobbit movies, so I think this is time for us to sign off. Au revoir forever, baby. Mwah.